The dance between experience and expertise. Tracking the contemporary doctorate. This 10-part podcast series is shared between Jamie Quinton and Tara Brabazon. Jamie, it's wonderful to talk to you, and this is an exciting series. I love it when we do a series. This is an exciting series. We're starting a series of 10, #No Pressure, to take people through the doctorate, because we talk about, begin with the end in mind, but how do you know what you don't know? So we're hoping for people that either are about to start a doctorate or are sort of stuck or trapped. We're going to provide them with a diagnostic to create momentum for them once more. So this is our first one, and I thought we'd just talk about preparation for the doctorate. Okay. And that preparation can be a year in advance or indeed more. So from your perspective as a very, very experienced supervisor and someone who's been involved in the writing of policy and procedure with ethics and so forth, what is the best preparation into a doctoral program from your perspective?
Well, that's a really good question. Certainly, I think most people start a PhD and they really don't know what it involves. They don't know what they're in for.
No.
And it's not a simple thing. It's actually quite complex. It's a complex journey with lots of steps and lots of challenges to take on. I think in terms of preparing for it, you need to be intellectually prepared. So you need to have some idea of what a PhD is and what will be required of you. It's also something that it truly is a marathon rather than a sprint. Yeah. So you need to be prepared for a 3 to 4 year journey. Yeah. And so intellectually, I would suggest figuring out how to be as open-minded as possible. Well, being able to engage with a question with an open mind where it'll take you on a journey and you don't know where that journey is going to go at the start. Yeah. Rather than trying to design the journey from the start and then walk the path to the end.
So being comfortable with uncertainty, being comfortable with taking new information and making different decisions.
Yep. And I don't know the easiest way to prepare for that other than recognising that is the case. Right? So in the sciences we'll say let the project guide you, follow where the project goes.
Nice.
And a lot of preparatory learning that people undertake in sciences before they get to the PhD is very procedural. It's very much here is the matrix of investigations you have to do, fill them out, and then write against it. You know, most of the undergrad lab exercises, things like that, are not open. They're not exploratory. Now, to enter a PhD, a person has to demonstrate that they have the capacity to undertake a PhD. So they will have had an experience, whether it's a master's or honours or
a proxy.
Yeah, some sort of preparatory journey where they will have had to have demonstrated the ability to write a thesis and to undertake some open learning. But a PhD is a deep and broad exploration. So you have to be willing. You have to be willing to learn new things. You have to be willing to tackle something that you've never seen before, and it'll be in the truest sense, a journey that has challenges, and some of them will seem insurmountable.
Yeah, and I always think the greatest T-shirt slogan we can share with a PhD student is enjoy the surprises, because research is about the surprises, not denying the surprises, and we may talk in our series about feedback as well, but embracing the surprises, because the surprises is where the research actually is.
Yep.
And maybe, which leads to my second question about how we prepare people to manage surprises. And that for me is always PD. I'm a big supporter of professional development, as you know, and I think people should do a lot of professional development in the 2 months, 3 months, 6 months before they enter the program, so they can at least know what they don't know. But how important for you is a reasonably organised or thoughtful professional development program before the doctorate?
I'm also very much a fan of professional development. So if I can if I take that original concept of being open-minded, the second one is a willingness to learn, a willingness to grow, a willingness to recognise that I actually don't know this, or I don't know where to start, so I better develop my capacity, develop my skills, and being willing to do so. So a willingness to grow, a willingness to learn, and I will say, in my experience, most people don't have that capacity very strongly, and even those who do overestimate themselves.
Oh, I think that's strong. And I think, we talk about this a lot in our sort of married life, that one of the great critiques we use of the present is that there's, we want people to be confident. We want people to have that self-confidence and so forth. But the problem is these days, I think through social media and the dopamine economy, it's spilling over into overconfidence, where people are assuming a data set of one. I have a feeling, I have an experience, and that experience is knowledge. And I think we need to go back to, your correlation, your emotional state does not necessarily correlate to knowledge. And I think we need to intervene in that experiential ideology, the data set of one, and PD does that well.
It does. I would say I'd like to do the backward mapping. So at the end of the PhD, we as supervisors would hope that the graduate is a world expert in some small area, that they have contributed brand new knowledge to the world, and that they are the world expert. Now, if I express that in terms of like a teaching philosophy, not only do we want confidence, but we want competence as well, and we want the person to be able to wield their knowledge expertly with confidence. And the confidence comes from having the deep knowledge, having the real knowledge. It doesn't really come from, doing a Google search and getting an answer, or watching a 5-minute video clip, or and then suddenly
putting a prompt into generative AI.
Yep. Just the idea of what is information and what is knowledge. The PhD is a deep exercise in deep learning of deep and broad knowledge. So your ability to wield it is part of the skills that you develop while you're doing the PhD.
I think that's brilliant. Realising you've got to develop competence, and from the competence comes confidence, rather than the other way around. So we've handled the importance of PD. That's great. The other big area I think we've got to address in this preparation for the doctorate is, even before a supervisor has either been assigned to you or you have found a supervisor and you're agreeing on it, you have to think through that relationship. How would you get people to visualise or do the excavation work to think about how to build a relationship with a supervisor or advisor?
Yeah, that's a great question too.
Before you get to the person, so it's not person to person, how do you do that framework, that framing work?
Yeah. So the PhD candidature, I think the best ones are in some way collaborative, right? The advisor works with the student works with the advisor, and they do it collaboratively. So the best way to do that is to actually share ideas, to share thoughts on where things are, where the sticking points are, where the opportunities are, and that is about how you develop your capacity to do it, because the best supervisors start with sharing their perspectives and their experience with the student, but then they quickly start to ask the student, what would the student do? And try and create opportunities for the student to broaden their ability to do that.
So what I get from you so far is work on the communication system. So the communication system as a sharing system is where the supervisory relationship starts.
I think so, yes. I know different supervisors have different styles. Yeah. That's the style that seems to work best in my area, in my disciplines.
Yeah. Can I ask a hard question? And the follow-up hard question to that is, have you got a sense these days, post-Respect Now Always, all the very serious sexual assault, sexual harassment, bullying complaints that have existed around the world in doctoral education, have you got a sense from the students to think about the personal and the professional division, how you would now separate out those functions before you actually even meet your supervisor? as a student, how would you organise the personal and the professional? Hard question, I know.
It is a hard question, and it's a difficult question it's a difficult thing to keep in mind the whole time, right? Because it is a long, long journey. I think in preparing for the PhD, if you're self-aware of these ideas, and you start the PhD with those ideas clear in your mind and where the boundary is and what you're going to do with it, I think that's the smartest way to approach it. And then just keep reminding yourself as you go. Because, you spend a lot of time on these things, and relationships, professional relationships, they, like all relationships, take focused effort. So you have to communicate, you have to keep checking, you have to, and so when you're having your regular meetings with your supervisor, or however often you do meet with them, there needs to be a little bit of focused effort on making sure that the communication and the boundaries, the rules of engagement, if you like, are still clear. All the way through. Yeah,
and that's often called role clarity. And why I suppose I'm so fixated on it is, remember, you're so much younger than me, but I did my PhD 30 years ago. And the rubbish that we put up with 30 years ago is against policy now. But the problem is people like me and people much older than me are still supervising with their data set of one and using the line, when I did my PhD, when we did our PhD, the world was different. So just making sure the students are reading the policies, procedures, and creating that role clarity. That's brilliant. Could you tell us a little bit, we've talked about the supervisor-student relationship. Tell us about, and this is a hard one, because when you did your PhD, you were, in a relationship and so forth, how you organise personal relationships with your parents, with your family, with your friends. How does that change?
How does that change?
When you're thinking about doing a PhD and you've got all these relationships, you've got a world around you, and then you're about to add a PhD to that. What do you do with those?
So the PhD takes a considerable fraction of your time, and your life, and you again, it starts with self-awareness. The more self-aware you are, and that will be a different challenge for different demographics.
Nice.
So in some disciplines like the humanities, you typically have students doing a PhD who are older than students who are doing a science PhD.
Correct.
So you meet people at different stages of their lives with different levels of self-awareness and development, and different expectations. And one of the challenges in a PhD, I guess, is that the day-to-day problems of life tend to be in focus all the time, and so the ability to step back and just observe the holistic picture is actually something that most people don't do. They don't do it no matter what they do. It's not limited to a PhD, but
good point.
But that is an ongoing challenge. So, I try to get my students to, from time to time, just remember what they're doing and why they're doing it. Why are we doing the PhD? Because the PhD is always a challenge with motivation, with commitment, with putting in the effort, and it can wear you down over 3 or 4 years. So stepping back and seeing the big picture, most of us don't do that unless we get away from the coalface and we actually get a bit of time to get away from it and then have a bit more of a think about it and then re-engage with it.
And also being aware that you're, say if you've got a partner or you've got kids or your parents and so forth, your friends, they're sacrificing for your thesis.
So it is. The whole thing is about expectations, really, right?
That's it.
So, your family will have expectations. You'll have expectations of your family. Same across all interactions with all people. And if you have the need to manage those expectations with your family, then you need to have that up front.
Exactly right. Talk about, because of course 1% of the world's population, I think it's now 1.2% of the world's population has a PhD. When people do a PhD, they almost invariably only do one. So most of the people you meet in your life have not done a PhD. So you have to, as a student, speak the words to share that experience, so that socialisation is shared, because people will just be going, you're not cleaning the house, you're not taking the kids to football. What's going on here? You have vacated your life, and we are suffering.
And that's right. And they will probably see it as a selfish endeavour.
Which I also think it is. And so it's about being honest with that and sharing the experience in an honest way. And just not assuming it's going to be okay. Because, for example, a particular sociological group of women, a particular age group of women, divorce during a doctorate. So it's quite serious to get, I'll use the dreadful cliche, get the ducks in the row, but speak the words of the experience and finish as quickly as you can, because people around you are suffering. Now, last question from me. What do you think is forgotten or ignored? So when we meet a new student and it's all, it's wonderful at the beginning. It hits the bin by the end, but it's wonderful at the beginning. It's exciting. The world is your oyster. But what do you think we ignore or we've not spoken enough about in those early stages of a doctorate? That, looking back on it now with all our experiences and the great SOS research literature, scholarship of supervision, what should we talk about more that we don't?
Well, you're right. At the start, it's all about the idea. What an exciting prospect. We've got this idea. Whether it's the supervisor giving the idea to the student or the student coming with the idea, there's so it's the look at this rich landscape that we can explore, right? But I think one of the things we should talk about more is we'd be better off able to express what this thing actually looks like. You mentioned 30 years ago when the world was different. No one really told us what a PhD is or what it's supposed to look like.
And I don't think my supervisor knew what a PhD was. I was his first supervision. Actually, you were your first supervision as well. My inverted commas supervisor had no idea about anything at all. He did his own PhD collecting up some publications, so he had no actual ideas about research. It was a mess, absolute mess, no idea.
Yeah, no, I think that's more about experience.
Yeah,
right. It's very easy to judge at different stages, but it comes down to how much experience at the time, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's important for students to understand that this is a journey for the supervisor as well. And it doesn't matter if the supervisors supervise no students or one student, or if they've supervised 200 students. It doesn't matter. It's still a journey that the supervisor takes as well.
And every student, every data point is different.
Absolutely.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Every student is a that's right. And so the focus needs to be on the candidature and on the thesis. But I was going to say I think students need to read more examples of other theses.
Boom.
Right. The best preparation you could do for what is this thing going to involve is to actually have a look at other theses.
Spot
on. And a student knows that most of them don't read more than one or two because they know how much effort goes into it.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually useful to read one or two key ones, and of course, when you start out, what you take from reading is different than what you'll take from reading at the end of the candidature.
You're probably looking more for form or genre rather than content and context.
That's right. And when you read it without your knowledge and your experience, you'll gloss over things that actually take ages of effort and concentration and rationalisation, and you won't notice that was the time-consuming part.
Yeah.
So it's actually really valuable, not just for students who are starting, but for students who are completing, to also go back and have another look at a couple of theses.
Tremendous.
Just to engage that part of the brain where you're not just generating and your intentions may not be reaching the page, and you can't see it because when you read your own work, you're reading your intentions rather than what you've done.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So that's the finish, not the start. We're talking about the start.
But I think it's both. I think reading theses is transformative. And what you've said is actually don't read 1 or 2, which is what I've said. You've said read 5.
One of the skills that matter is your ability to read something and work out what's valuable within it and what's not. And the only way you're going to develop that skill is to exercise that. So, and be kind to yourself. When you go and read a thesis the first time, you'll probably find it daunting, and you may even find it discouraging. But your ability to work out what's useful is when you can critique and say, hey, that worked really well. That was really useful. And then this bit, I don't know why they put that bit in there. It didn't add anything. It didn't contribute much. Maybe that shouldn't have been there. If you get to that level of being able to read a thesis and be able to say, make that judgment, then you're doing well. You're developing your skill and your experience. Yeah. If you read it and just take it in as a bunch of information, which is, of course, what the masses do when they go to Google or they go to generative AI. They're just taking information and their ability to differentiate between what is deeply valuable information and what is not. That's the skill that matters when it comes to reading and interpreting.
That's right. There's got to be a gauze of information literacy.
You'll also start your PhD and your supervisor will give you a couple of key readings that you need to engage with because they're foundational for the work that you're doing. So you definitely need to engage with that and engage with it as deeply as possible. Write down lots of questions. If something's not clear, take it to the supervisor and say, can we talk about this? I read this, I think that's what this means. Is that what I'm supposed to take from it? And have those conversations with the experienced people. All of that, though, is after you start. What do you do before you start? Well, if you have an area of interest that you're planning on getting involved in your PhD, go and look for some overview type material. Go to Google Scholar and type in the field that you're interested in and see if there is any recent articles, publications, review articles that give you an overview of the discipline and the area. And
if I can also do another big shout out for Google Scholar, of course theses are also incorporated in Google Scholar, so you can we'll have people listening to these sessions from around the world. National systems are different, are regulated differently in doctoral education. Obviously, Aotearoa, New Zealand, Australia and the United Kingdom have a great similarity, and that particular model has spread particularly to Singapore, Malaysia and so forth. But other national systems are different, of which the North American model's the clear archetype. But you have freely available open access theses from your nation state and from your disciplines that are available today and sourced from Google Scholar. So for me, and as you've said before you start, don't just read 1 or 2, read 5, and don't be concerned if you don't understand 80% of it, because what you're reading for at the start is form rather than content, what the genre of a doctorate looks like. Oh, Jamie, that was brilliant.
Even general claims will be in the introduction and the abstract of most things. So you can survey the literature like that.
Yeah, and learn the genre of a doctorate.
Absolutely. And the last piece of advice I'd give people is make sure that you're the brain behind the process. So don't try and avoid the easy path, which is happening in ads in social media, where get this AI tool and it'll do the search for you and it'll give you the digested version. The process of digesting and working out what's valuable and what's not is the skill that matters the most. And if you hand that responsibility over to a computer, to an algorithm, then that's a skill that you won't develop, and it's one that matters. It'll matter more and more as the candidature goes on.
Yeah. And if I can just finish with a final point on that, I'm reading a great deal at the moment, and I'm reading a lot of rubbish at the moment. And it's very, very easy to pick the generative AI prose that's being written because it's wrong. Sometimes some of the people actually leave the prompts in, which is just crazy. But it is so easy to pick. So it's very important. My final point that I finish with for our colleagues listening to this is get the pitch of your reading right. It's very easy. There's so much rubbish. There's so much low quality material out there. And of course the low quality material is easier to read. So force yourself to read material that you don't understand, because
That's right.
that is how you
That's
learn.
right.
If you're understanding 100% of what you're reading, you're just using tertiary sources. You're using stuff that's too basic. And that's why read the doctorates and right at the start, and then know that I'm only going to understand about 10% of this, but be cool with that because you're challenging yourself.
Yeah. I kind of want to say that as as we submit articles to journals now, there are more counter AI.
There certainly are.
Responses that you get when you submit to journals. So the journals are actually looking for that. As an editor of a journal, I know that I have to deal with decisions where there are manuscripts that have these problems. So these are more prevalent than ever.
Yeah.
And then I just wanted to generalise and say that even though we now live in a world where everybody's looking for the shortest path, the shortest path to an outcome. So I don't want to say we're lazy, but we are so frugal with our time and our investment of our time.
Yeah.
No one's prepared to put any time into anything if they don't need to. And so the perception is that, by going to Google and going to AI, you can save yourself a lot of time. Yeah. Most of the ads, if not all of the ads that you see, spruiking for you to spend your money on their tool, which is what they're actually after.
And remember, I've been collecting these for 3 years. You're right.
Yeah. All they want to do is save you time. Yeah. But in a PhD, you need to remember that every minute you invest, genuinely learning, reading, deeply learning new ideas, is worthwhile, because your thesis is going to be defined by as much as what you leave out of it as what you put into it. So don't assume that your job is to take every little bit that you learn and put it in your thesis, and your thesis is complete when you've managed to include enough things, right? That's not what it's about.
No. I'll use the dreadful phrase research training. A higher degree program is research training. I prefer the phrase research education. But as you've rightly said, the PhD is the last stand in what I describe as a shortcut culture. Yep. We are living in a shortcut culture, and the PhD is the last point where, you know what, it stands for something. It stands for rigour, transparency and excellence, and it also stands for learning. So Jamie, I thank you so much for our first session. That's amazing. They're on the hashtag no pressure, 9 to go, but I hope that's useful for everybody. And as always, hi Doug, please give us your comments. We love hearing from you. Talk to you soon.